Good morning, everyone. We'll start this House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee and bring it to order at this time. Members, if you would please sign in to your microphone stations. And clerk, please take the roll. For those watching intently at home, these pads are not the easiest to log into, I can tell you. All right, we got that worked through. I don't know what maybe we need a little WD-40 on these things or something. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, we have 13 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And we will start now with the prayer and the pledge. If everyone will stand, I'll call on Representative Travis to lead us.
Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace, for your love, for your kindness. Be with us this day. Be with our families. Be with the ones that are here. Thank you for everything that you do for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any personal orders today? Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Representative Mark White, I'd like to welcome Jerry and Kim from Shelby County.
And I want to recognize the folks, I believe, from Rutherford County, from Farm Bureau. Appreciate you guys being here with us today. And thank you for everyone's patience having to move rooms this morning. We had to accommodate for the public as we want to do, and we were glad to make the switch, kind of get back in our old room for a change. Any other personal orders? Okay, seeing none, I want to just take a moment to let you know something about Watts Bar Dam. It's located about midway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. It's one of 9 TVA dams on the Tennessee River. The reservoir is popular for boating, fishing, swimming, camping, and other outdoor activities. A scenic overlook near the dam provides visitors with a panoramic view of the reservoir and surrounding countryside. The dam is named for Watt Island, a sandbar located at the site prior to the dam's construction in 1939. It was completed in January 1942, just 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor attack, and provided urgently needed electricity for the war effort, including the Manhattan Project at nearby Oak Ridge National Laboratories. Before TVA created Watts Bar and other reservoirs above Chattanooga, that city had one of the most serious flooding problems in the nation. Now, the river that often threatened the city contributes to its economy as a major artery for barge traffic, thanks in large part to large reservoirs like Watts Bar and adjacent Chickamauga. The dam is a hydroelectric facility. It has 5 generating units with a summer net dependable capacity of 196 megawatts. It is 112 feet high and stretches 2,960 feet across the Tennessee River and has one 60 by 360 foot long dock that lifts and lowers barges as much as 70 feet to the Chickamauga Reservoir. The lock handles more than 1 million tons of cargo each year. And that cargo would be on our highways, probably if it wasn't on barges. In addition to forming a navigable 72-mile-long reservoir on the Tennessee River, Watts Bar also creates a slackwater channel for the navigation more than 20 miles up the Clinch River and 12 miles up the Emory River. The dam stands as a true engineering marvel and a testament of Tennessee ingenuity. And this chairman looks much forward to future years where I can see what kind of fish are in that reservoir. At this time, we will take up our calendar. Chairman Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we deal with item 2 first, so Chairman Slater can get back to his committee.
We have a motion and a second. Without objection, Representative Slater, if you would come to the podium, we will recognize you on House Bill 328, sir. Got a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the tour of Watts Bar this past summer. Thank you very much. House Bill 328 will give to honorably discharged veterans the same discounts at our state parks as state employees have. And with that brief explanation, I stand ready for questions.
Any questions on this bill? Seeing none, if you're ready to vote, Mr. Clerk, please open the vote. Has everyone voted? Anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote. Announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, we have 14 ayes.
Thank you for that. Your bill moves on to Finance, Ways and Means. Next, we'll go back to item number 1 on the calendar, House Bill 1060. We have a motion and a second. Representative Howell, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill was brought to me by the County Clerks Association. Currently, a large number of our county clerks provide a service for those who hunt and fish by selling hunting and fishing license for TWRA. This is not mandated. It's something they do as a service. Their fee of $1.50 no longer covers their overhead, such as labor time, computer, paper, and ink. In recent years, TWRA has decided to not sell those licenses themselves. They contract with a third-party vendor. That vendor gets $3.52. The clerks would like to cover their fee with a $3 fee. So I request passage.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments on the bill? Seeing none, if you're ready to vote, we'll be voting. Mr. Clerk, please open the vote. Has everyone voted? Anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, we have 14 ayes.
Thank you, sir. House Bill 1060 moves on to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Next, we have House Bill 199 by Representative Reeves. We have a motion and a second. Sir, you're recognized on House Bill 199.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation can currently issue variances for subsurface sewage disposal systems in counties who have not entered into a contract with the department. 9 counties have that arrangement. HB 199 expands the Commissioner's ability to grant variances on these systems in contract counties, and I stand open for questions.
Okay. Any questions? Representative Halsey.
Thank you. The term variance, what does that exactly mean in context to your bill?
Appreciate the question, Chairman. It's similar to the Planning Department and a Board of Zoning Appeals. It's for specific situations where extra consideration may need to be required.
Representative Halsey.
Okay, so what your bill actually does is if a county is contracted with a subcontractor on variances, as the term is used, your bill prevents them from making more stringent variances than the department would make. Am I reading that right?
Representative Reeves.
I appreciate that. The contract counties generally have more strict requirements under their contracts, but sometimes they're hemmed in by that and cannot actually, like in Williamson, where I'm from, cannot actually go outside of that contract very easily. And so this gives TDEC the ability to weigh in on a specific situation where there's a setback line that that TDEC would allow, but the contract county under its contract may not. So
Okay.
this is a checks and balances.
Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sponsor, a couple questions. What are the 9 counties that are involved with this?
Appreciate that question. We've got Shelby, Madison, Williamson, Davidson, Hamilton, Knox, Jefferson, Blunt, and Sevier.
Representative Vital.
Thank you. Were you able to talk to anyone in Hamilton County?
Representative Reeves.
In Hamilton County, outside of you and Mr. Martin, I have not.
Representative Vital.
Thank you. In my county, and I will only speak for my feedback, I'll let Representative Martin address his portion of the county. There's great concern that with the rapid growth that we've had, the unchecked residential growth, this is allowing the state to override decisions that we feel are in the best interests of the development in our county. And we are opposed to it. We really think the decision or the variances really need to be made at the local level. And with that, we've talked about this. I and the folks of Hamilton County do not support this bill. Thank you.
Representative Reeves.
Well, I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the consideration that you've given. With respect, I don't think this does what the concern is. And if the chair would allow, or if there's interest, I would love to have TDEC come and address any specific question.
Representative Vital.
I will take that privilege in a minute. I just want to clarify, does this cover decentralized sewer systems?
Representative Reeves.
My understanding is it does not. It's for individual septic.
So this is for only individual sewer systems. It's not allow them to override decisions made on decentral sewer systems.
Representative Reeves.
I appreciate that question. I don't believe so, but I would love to have TDEC answer that directly for me.
Yeah, I would like that clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Been a request to hear from TDEC. They are on the list to testify if needed. So without objection, we will go out of session. We will ask a TDEC representative to come to the well or one of the microphones. Just let us know who wants to speak first, and then we will recognize it. Okay. If you'll state your name, who you're with, what your position is, then we'll be
Okay.
glad to.
Yes, sir. My name is Brad Harris. I'm the manager for the Land-Based Systems Unit with the Division of Water Resources, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you for that. Representative Vital, you want to pose a question?
Thank you for being here. My question is involving whether this variance would involve single disposal systems, or does it involve decentralized sewage systems that are now being used for outlier subdivisions?
You recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, sir, it doesn't involve large public sewage systems. It's specific to just the septic system program.
For an individual home?
Individual homes, yes, under Title 68. So it's the septic system program. The larger decentralized drip systems, sometimes referred to as STEP systems, are permitted through state operational permits under the Tennessee Water Quality Control Act.
So,
Representative Vital.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to clarify that there's just one home allowed to be hooked up onto this septic tank system that they might appeal for a variance.
Mr. Harris.
It's specific to single ownership. So in other words, at my house is hooked up to a septic system. If I wanted to build a shop on my property and put in a septic system for that, you may have parcels of property that have more than one septic system or more than one building hooked to them. But it does not support public sewage systems like the large drip systems or those things.
Representative Vital.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, sir.
Representative Bain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. So members of this committee received around, oh, sorry, actually, this question is for Representative Reeves, so apologies.
That's okay. Representative Martin.
Thank you. I have a question that is twofold, perhaps for the attorney, perhaps for TDEC. Following up on my colleague from Eastern Hamilton County. When I look through the code of 68-410, I'm not seeing the distinction between a single home septic tank and this drip system that very well could be like for an apartment complex. Would an apartment complex fall under this?
Mr. Harris.
If it's under single ownership, you could put in a large capacity septic system. In other words, if you owned an apartment complex.
So,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Representative Williams.
So, for example, if there's a builder that is going to build 300 homes and he's going to rent these homes out, like they're single units, they're not apartments, but they're homes. But they're going to rent them. They're not going to sell them. So you have one owner. He could take this law as we're getting ready to consider it, and he could use that to say, I don't care what the locals say. We're going to get the commissioner to come in here and trump that because they're all owned by one person who's renting it to 300 people over 5 or 6 acres. Am I following? Am I tracking with you on that because he's a single owner?
Mr. Harris.
It would be, normally when you have a public sewage system, it requires a utility. So there's two types of utilities, obviously chartered utility districts. You could have water and wastewater authorities, or you could have private wastewater companies through the Tennessee Public Utilities Commission. So in the example that you talked about, we would ask for clarification from the Tennessee Public Utilities Commission on whether they required it, it had to be a utility to serve such a thing. I'm not aware of any kind of development like that.
Representative Martin.
I am right down the road from me. And I don't begrudge it. I mean, it's capitalism, it's free country. I get that. I just don't want to be understanding one thing and reality being another thing. Because the way that this was presented to me is that if you had one individual and he sold off part of his land and his septic tank ended up on his neighbor's, that the commissioner could come in and fix that. And I get that. That's not my concern. My concern is that the people that are locally elected back home, they should be the ones that are making decisions with regard to this and not have someone that's coming in. And if someone's going to build 300 homes and rent them out and it's a single owner, well, then do the locals really have a say on that? That's my problem. And I thank you for helping me see that you're not as clear. At least I'm not hearing you say that you're as clear on it as I wish that you were. And so I'm going to give you one more opportunity to, and I don't mean that disrespectful, please. I'm not hearing you satisfy my concerns. So I want to give you an opportunity again, that if somebody owned 300 houses and they rented them, they could put their own system in and have the commissioner trump or override what the local planning commission or the county commission or the city council did. Am I right about that or am I wrong?
Mr. Harris, if you can hold that thought for a second. Representative Martin, I have a question for you on the system you're talking about that you know of. It is a subsurface septic disposal system
We have those.
for multiple homes. Okay.
That's my question is, can you do that? I know that we have people that rent them. I don't know if they're on WWTA or they have their own subsystem, but I do know that there are apartment complexes that are owned by individuals that have that subsystem, that one system because it's one owner.
So
Because they're not
Mr.
tied
Harris,
to a sewer system.
that may be part of the question for clarity. Do you know of systems that are subsurface that are under what this bill covers that would be for multiple homes like that are, permitting and what's been done in the past?
There may be examples, Mr. Chairman, but they would be rare. The variance when we look at variances, it's normally a setback to a property line. It's a design flow for a single-family home. And we work with Hamilton County staff constantly. I think the regulations for septic systems in Hamilton County are the same, if not very close to what the state regulations are. So we work with your local staff when they have a variance request from state regulation. The large decentralized systems is a complete different animal. I'm just not aware of any big developments that are served by septic systems. There's a few reasons for that. A conventional septic system takes up a lot of space compared to the decentralized drip systems. And the other is, drip systems, we issue drip system permits for individual homes as well. But they're limited at 1,500 gallons a day, and they're served by units that are NSF certified, which cuts off at 1,500 gallons a day. So primarily everything we do in the septic field is single family homes. I don't know the percentages, but this bill wouldn't affect the decentralized wastewater systems, sir.
Representative Martin?
I just want to thank you so much for sharing. Really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Alexander, did you have a question for our guest?
So if you're not a contract county, this doesn't apply to you.
Ms. Harris?
The commissioner already has the authority to consider variances in contract counties.
Representative Alexander.
in
And
state
not-
administered counties. excuse
State
me.
administrator. Okay. All right. Just double checking. Thank you.
Any other questions for our guests? Ms. Harris, I appreciate you being here.
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Alley, thank you all for being available for us. Okay, without objection, we'll go back into session. We're back in session. Now we have, I think I have Representative Bain on the list for our sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reeves, many of us on the committee received multiple emails from your constituents citing that they're against this bill. Could you speak to their concerns around the undermining of local authority? And I want to just commend Representative Martin, who covered a lot of my concerns and questions regarding this bill. But why would your constituents be emailing us that they're against this?
Representative Reeves.
Yep. Thank you, Representative. I'm not aware of any of my constituents emailing anybody else. To my knowledge, they have not emailed me. So I'm not sure the answer to that.
Representative Bain.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That it does seems to be some, not really confusion, but maybe some doubt about some things. I don't know if I'd be in order to make a motion to roll this a week, get clarity on it. Or I don't know how late we are in the committee. I really don't. If I'm in order, if that motion is in order, I'd like to make a motion to roll it for 1 week to get the clarity on it.
We have a motion to roll this 1 week and we have a second. We have an objection, so we will need to vote on that. So all in favor of rolling this 1 week, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. We'll roll this 1 week.
Thank you, guys.
Next on our list, we have item number 4, which is House Bill 1112 by Representative Fritz. Do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Representative Fritz, you are recognized on 1112.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. House Bill 1112 basically does 4 things. I'm going to mention a couple sections of code in my brief entry to this before I take any questions, Mr. Chairman. First will be 68-201-122. We passed that legislation last year, and it basically says, or it actually quote says, the intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compounds, substances, or apparatus within the borders of this state into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight. And that law prohibits that. This bill does 4 basic things. Next, I'll talk about 58-2-116A and 58-2-116A to my memory and recollection, sir. It was approximately a 2000 era law that went into place, and it says that state agencies, including but not limited to those charged with the responsibility in connection with floodplain management, stream encroachment, flow regulation, weather modification, fire prevention and control, air quality, public works, land use, and use of planning and construction standards. And it goes on to say that the governor's staff can conduct studies of that. So this bill that I bring before you today authorizes the Attorney General and local district attorneys to investigate reports of violations of the section 68-201-122 that have been deemed credible by agencies regarding 58-2-116A. Secondly, it authorizes the AG and local district attorneys to initiate investigations following emergencies described in 58-2-116. Thirdly, it makes violations of 68-201-112 a Class A misdemeanor, and that would apply to persons or entities carrying out the intentional injection of chemicals or chemical compounds or apparatus into the atmosphere for purposes of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight. Secondly, it includes those persons or entities who knowingly supplied the chemicals or chemical compounds and or the apparatus being intentionally injected into the atmosphere. And fourthly, this bill gives TDEC the ability to assess fines for violations of 68-201-112 up to $100,000. That's currently at $10,000. And I'll make one other comment. This goes back to a really good question I got from our Farm Bureau friends last week. And it's on page 2 of the actual bill itself that's before us under 2. And it says the occurrence of harmful consequence of an emergency as described in 58-2-116. If the Attorney General and reporter or local district attorney reasonably believes that weather modification has or might have taken place. And we did that tie-in to make sure that we don't get into all those other categories mentioned in 58-2-116 and tie it specifically to the weather modification. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause and take any questions or advice you have, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go to Chairman Halsey first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I appreciate your effort and your work on this. Last year when we put out the first leg of it, you took a beating and we all took a lot of mockery. And since that time, there's been several other states that are starting down the same road because they say the same issue or see the same issue. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate that.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Halsey. We have had contact from Florida, Idaho, Iowa, South Carolina, many other states, some of which have actually taken the wording that we used last year in our Clean Air Act and resembled it closely in what they've carried in legislation. So it has become something that has become much more conversational than it was last year, Representative Halsey. Thank you.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, sponsor. And as you know, I was for your bill last year and this year too, but I just have a question. Is there a baseline? How do we, is there a study that's got a baseline to know what the atmosphere was like before we started putting these requirements on TDOT to, or TDEC to, sorry, not TDOT, TDEC to investigate this? And is there, do we have a baseline? Do we know what's currently in the atmosphere?
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative. Great question. We actually talked with TDEC last year. One of the things that I had hoped to carry this year, we did not file for this year, was to do some required study of what is indeed in the atmosphere. We do conduct, following weather events now, some limited sampling. I would leave that to TDEC to describe exactly what that is. But part of the reason we took the approach we did in this bill is so that we can track that supply chain of those chemicals that might be used and are associated with geoengineering and weather modification. If you'll recall last year, we had testimony from a young man talked about using silver iodide for cloud seeding, which I think is one of the, Monty's opinion, is one of the limited versions of geoengineering at large. And we talked about the fact that any of those chemicals that we put into the atmosphere, they're coming back down on us. I think there's a challenge. Country boy from Roane County, grew up on Watts Bar Lake that we talked about. I may not be the subject matter expert on what's in the atmosphere, But I can assure you that the laws of physics are that what goes up must come down. And I can assure you that if we are putting those chemicals and compounds into the atmosphere in an attempt to modify the weather to reflect the sunlight, as it is reported is taking place in many parts of the world, that's going to find itself into our food supply, our water supply, and our soil. It impacts our crops. It impacts our children and our grandparents. And so I think it's something that is definitely worth pursuing. I think the approach we've taken at this would prevent some of that, what might be atmospheric sampling. I suspect that would have a great cost. And I also suspect that the atmosphere that's over Nashville, Tennessee right now is going to be different in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think prevailing patterns of weather would make it clear to us that you're going to have some median average. I don't know what that would be. I think there's going to be a cost to that, and perhaps that's something we look at next year. But I just didn't want to try to put a huge fiscal note on what we're trying to accomplish with this. Thank you for your question,
Representative Alexander.
And thank you. And I agree with what you're saying. I just am concerned how TDEC is going to be able to capture these wrongdoers. And that's huge in itself. It's going to require quite a bit. Is there a fiscal note on this?
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fiscal note's not significant on the bill. And I understand that the governor's office has flagged this bill.
Oh, really?
And rumor has it that we flagged it on philosophical reasons. I think that's probably, y'all have seen that. Rumor has it that part of those philosophical reasons was that it may be overreach to try to enforce this. I find that to be a ridiculous statement, to be honest with you. If indeed we are, we've had folks testify that we're putting chemicals into the atmosphere for this. I find it to be a ridiculous statement that we would not enforce stopping that.
Representative Alexander.
I agree. And I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving TDEC an assignment that was impossible for them to do. That was my concern about it. Okay.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a great question. I too did not want to do that. And that's why we brought the Attorney General and the district attorneys into this, who are quite accustomed to investigative procedures and evidence collection. And when we put in the second part for the chemicals and the provision of those chemicals, I think it becomes something that is enforceable, trackable, and certainly this is new ground. We've led the way in Tennessee in this. I'm certainly willing to learn how to do this better, but I think this is a good shot for this year.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you for all those explanations. Appreciate it.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think along the same lines, that's kind of my concern, is the overreach of what we are wanting to do. It may be all you just said, may be the reason why we need more. You know, when you talk about the atmosphere and what's in it, and of course you're right, what goes up must come down, all those things. But I think my concern is, are we trying to solve a problem, but creating more of a problem when it comes to what we are expecting TDEC to do? I'm not for sure they've got the technology. I don't know. I never asked them, but I don't know if they got the technology to do this in the way you're describing that we want it done. And all due respect, I really appreciate your passion about this, but you get some of us who've been around here a long time get a good level feeling about some things that we're trying to solve a problem and we're creating a problem. Is there any other resources we could go to that you know of to look at what we're doing and how we could do it to make sure that it's done right, that it's safe and sound? Because I don't know if TDEC has the ability. I don't know, can we go out of session and ask that question, Mr. Chairman?
Representative Shaw, we do have several people on the list to testify opposed and for this bill, and we will do that at any moment. I've got a couple other people on the list. We can stop now and go out of session. It's just whatever the will of the committee is.
I'm with the committee. I can wait, but I would like to hear more about that, because I think we put in quite quite a burden on the department to do something here, and I'd just like to hear their opinion about it. Thank you.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Shaw. I appreciate it. I too share that concern that we don't want to overburden our departments. I would offer that 58-2-116A already carries, and that's a 2000 law, already carries the responsibility for the executive department to conduct these studies of all those things that we mentioned when we read. And so I would assume, based on the budgets we've approved, that has been a funded effort. If that means that we need to increase those for this, I certainly would be willing at some point in time. But we crafted this bill to specifically go after that evidentiary chain in conjunction with current authorities of the governor's office.
Okay, thank you for that. And with the request to go out of session, and I would want to hear from the folks that have signed up to speak, without objection, we will go out of session. We're now out of session, and we'll hear from, I guess, TDEC's name has been mentioned a number of times. So anyone here with the Department of Environment and Conservation, if you would come up to the chairs and the microphones and just let us know who needs to speak first. I guess I'll call on Ms. Williamson first. If you'll state your name and your title, who you're with, then we'll have a statement from you, and then anybody else that is with you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Allie Williamson, and I'm the Legislative Director for the Department of Environment and Conservation. I first want to acknowledge that TDEC understands the public's concern over geoengineering and want to make clear that the department values and takes seriously any environmental health issues that may arise. TDEC understands that weather modification raises legitimate concerns about environmental impact and unintended consequences. Geoengineering and cloud seeding was outlawed last year by this body, forbidding TDEC to permit any such activity in the state. However, it is important to note that this legislation introduces some significant practical challenges for the department. TDEC's Division of Air Pollution Control's primary responsibility is to protect public health and the environment from air pollution based on scientifically backed evidence and federal regulations. This includes air quality and pollution control, monitoring pollutants like particulate matter, ozone, and other regulated pollutants. The requirements of this bill would be considered a new program for our division, requiring new staff to administer. Currently, the division is already operating with limited resources, both in personnel and budget, to monitor air quality concerns such as industrial emissions and other established air pollutants. The responsibility of adding a requirement to investigate claims about geoengineering would significantly stretch these resources. TDEC's Air Pollution Control Division received 150 phone calls on chemtrails and 25 on geoengineering in the past year, and have received many emails that often consist of visual evidence such as pictures of planes in the sky. Attempting to respond to such complaints would drain a significant amount of time and resources away from TDEC's Air Pollution Control's mission, likely to no avail. Another major hurdle TDEC currently faces is the absence of comparability. So when responding to a complaint, the division needs to have scientific baseline or historical precedent for the sample we're attempting to collect and be able to draw conclusions to. So we do not currently have this baseline yet to compare air quality or water samples collected. Additionally, when collecting samples, we cannot definitively say that the constituents collected did not come from an existing permittee in that area. So we don't have a way to attribute the pollutants asked for to a single source. In order to effectively carry out the requirements of this legislation, TDEC needs not just resources and manpower, but also to have an established scientific baseline to be able to compare samples and confidently offer evidence. We encourage continued rigorous scientific research into atmospheric science and geoengineering. However, that research is best left to the scientific community. Anything TDEC enforces, we want to be backed by science and be able to stand up in court. TDEC promises to remain responsive to the concerns of the public and informed by the best available science, as most studies are conducted. And with that, Chairman, we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our guest? Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all. And I do appreciate the work you all, and last year, what we pulled together, I know you caught lots of flack for it, and I so appreciate it. As Representative Halsey mentioned, we were thrown in front of the proverbial bus on some of this, and so I appreciate the efforts that TDEC has taken. But when I hear your testimony, I have to question a couple things. If I go back to 58-2-116A, which is current and existing law, and it specifically says, in addition to prevention measures included in the state and local comprehensive emergency management plans, The governor shall consider on a continuing basis, I think that's important, steps that could be taken to mitigate the harmful consequences of emergencies at the governor's discretion. State agencies, including but not limited to those charged with responsibilities in connection of floodplain management, stream encroachment, and flow regulation, weather modification, fire prevention and control, air quality, public works, land use, and the land use planning and construction standards shall make studies of emergency mitigation related matters. So my question after reading that, is that something that we are complying with today with weather modification, or do we not have the staff to do that?
Ms. Williams, who would like to speak? Okay, you
My
sir,
name is
state.
Alvin Pratt. I'm the Deputy Director of Environmental Measurements and Compliance Assurance for the Division of Air Pollution Control. For your question, we are answering those complaints that we get. As Ally mentioned, we've had 162 last year, over 30 this year. We answer every complaint. Unfortunately, because of our limited ability to regulate those complaints, they basically get a response that we acknowledge their complaint, and there's not much we can do about them. We are very limited in the way we handle complaints about in the air. We have major concerns with jurisdiction. The Federal Aviation Act regulates all activities in the air, and even some extend to the base levels of airports and air places that we do not have access to. The ability, as Ally mentioned, to the monitoring we do on ground, to say that comes from the air or actually from weather, the intent of weather producing is impossible. The monitoring we do is for criteria pollutants. There is no standards by EPA for silver iodide or any other weather-related pollutants. In fact, all the studies we have shown that they're not hazardous to health. I'm not aware of any studies other than maybe some in the West that relate them to even weather-related activity or dangers from that. So we're very limited as to what we have to be able to actually enforce anything.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. But the question is not regarding the law that we passed last year, because the law that we passed last year has gotten you all those phone calls. The question is regarding to, I think, the circa 2000 code of 58-2-116, and it says, shall make studies of emergency mitigation related matters. I can assure you, there are lots of people in the state of Tennessee that think that it's an emergency that we may be distributing chemicals to change the weather in our atmosphere. So I would ask you again, sir, are we enforcing this law? Are we conducting studies for weather modification today in Tennessee?
Mr. Pratt?
To my knowledge, we have not. We do not have that kind of resources to do those kind of type studies. Don't really know there's no baseline. Don't know what kind of studies we do actually. Again, when you look at weather modification, if you're looking at in cloud seeding, silver iodide, and I'm no expert on cloud seeding. Silver iodide, I've been told they put between around 200 grams of silver iodide into a cloud, 2 or 3 miles in the atmosphere. That then forms ice particles that fall down into rain, spread out over miles and miles. I don't know if you remember many years ago in air pollution, TVA came up with the idea that the solution pollution is dilution. By the time that cloud drops 3 miles and is spread over that period, there is no monitoring system available that can pick up anything. We would actually have to be in the cloud behind the plane to measure anything. I mean, it's just not for silver iodide, there'd be no way to monitor at this level today. Now, who's to say 100 years from now we may be able to, but I don't think the technology, to my knowledge, the technology is not available for that kind of
Fritz.
monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I promise, brother, I'm not trying to put you on the hard spot with this. I think I heard that we're not enforcing 58-2-16. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, I don't,
And-
we don't have the capability at this time to do that.
And I would go back to just a couple things from the sulfur dioxide and some of the other purported chemicals and compounds that are being injected into the atmosphere. The MSDS, and you're familiar with the MSDS, do limit many of those as toxic and harmful to human beings, including silver, the exposure to silver. And I certainly understand that dilution is the solution. I do understand that, but I don't think that our constituents are going to be okay with, well, it's just a little bit of silver iodide, so we're not going to worry about it. I think that's an erroneous message for us to send.
Representative Shaw.
There we are. Thank you all for being here. So back to where I was, and I think I heard it in so many words. I'm not trying to put words in you all's mouth, but y'all don't have the capabilities to do what the legislation is asking you to do. So what happens, if I may ask then, what happens, this goes into law and you can't do it? What posture does it put us in, and where are we?
Mary Margaret Chandler, Business Administrator, Air Pollution Control. The division has provided some documentation of what we believe that it would take to develop and implement the critical partnerships that Representative Fritz outlines in the bill. The partnerships, the enforcement the strategy, how we could implement this proposed legislation with respect to these activities. The state has the authority to regulate. We have provided some a fiscal note. Would you like for me to tell you? Okay.
Representative Shaw.
I don't quite understood what you were saying. You've provided a fiscal note for what it would cost. I'm trying to get an understanding.
Ms. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. So we submitted a fiscal note when we did an analysis of this bill. It was not agreed to by fiscal review, so we respectfully disagree. We do feel that this would provide a cost burden for the department. And so if this bill goes into effect, we would be left trying to comply with the bill, probably not to the best of our ability, and we would have to come back and ask for funding from this body.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're missing the conversation here, folks, just to be honest with you, just a little bit. The legislation before us would ask the DAs and the AG to take up the prosecutorial authority for this. The current law that exists, 58-2-116A, already is a responsibility of your agency, I think we would agree, to do those things. And so for those studies which tie in the language of the bill, I don't see that there's an additional encumbrance upon TDEC for this enforcement. And again, I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman. I so appreciate what you all have done with this. You have led the nation in being bold enough to take this on. So you have my heartfelt appreciation. I just think we disagree on this point.
Any other questions for our guests? Chairman Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to ask this to Representative Fritz, but it means we've got TDEC in front of us. And of course, we know there's cause and effect when it comes to pollution. And with that, be it residential, commercial, or agriculture, of stormwater runoff. But then we also know, and we keep hearing it in the news, as far as forever chemicals that are going into the public sewage system, which means, committee members, as we contaminate the sewage system, and the sewage systems cannot clean up those forever chemicals, and then they're making their way to our streams and lakes and reservoirs, our water, drinking water, and going in, ground contamination. And I'm curious And part of that, we did hear from government operations with TBI checking what kind of drugs are going where, but we know these illegal drug labs, they dump nonsense down the drain, and then we find it in the waters in our cities, in counties. But my question here, and of course in my chemistry class, it was the answer to pollution, or the solution is and it's like, okay, this does not make sense. How long can we do this before we've got a problem? So there's a lot of chemicals that we keep talking about, maybe should be banned, not be used. But what does TDEC do as far as, we know there's air quality control and there's permits for that on industries. What is being done? Or are we doing any testing of the water leaving the septic systems and going into our drinking water? Could you speak to any of that, please?
Ms. Williamson?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. I do know I don't have the right folks to be able to talk more in depth on some of these testing and studies that are being done. There's certain pilots that are done on what you're talking about, specifically for any sort of pharmaceuticals that are left in the water. But yes, short answer, yes, there are some studies that are conducted. These are also done on the national level. A lot of this comes from the EPA down. And so with that, yes, there are some studies.
Representative Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to having those discussions further, if not in the Ag Committee here, but of course, government operations, and seeing, and maybe, I don't know if it requires legislation or financial support to TDEC or to whomever, but this is catastrophic, especially for the generation that we have not given birth to yet. What are we up against? What is it going to do to their DNA and everything else? And what we're finding is some of the foods that we're eating has already got these contaminants in there, be it falling from the air or being flushed down the toilet or whatever. And I'll just quickly add this. Folks, if we're disposing of outdated medication, don't flush it down the toilet. Get it to the Sheriff's Department. There's the collection sites. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. I don't have anybody else on our list for a question for TDEC. We appreciate all of you being here and taking time to come join us today and offer this expertise.
Chairman.
We have two other folks on our list that have signed up to testify, Kim Eggert and Gerald Trudeau. If you will come to either chair you would prefer, we'll get your microphone turned on, and then you decide which one will speak first. You'll each have 3 minutes, and we'll open for questions after that. So you're recognized, ma'am. That's your name, please.
My name, pardon me, my name is Kim Eggert, and I'm from Memphis. I have to tell you that I started way years ago as being a skeptic about all of this geoengineering. In fact, I never heard that terminology. It was always chemtrails, and I really was a skeptic. And having been in aviation since 1987, I just was like, I poo-pooed it. I really did. I just didn't really think there was anything to the theory or whatever you want to call it. But as time went by, I started realizing this is a real thing. And I've done my own research. And to further Representative Fritz's comments about the silver iodide, we also have barium, strontium, and aluminum. Aluminum is definitely contraindicated for human consumption. You see how many people are walking around with dementia these days and Alzheimer's. Aluminum is an absolute causation of that, along with many other things. I realize that. But aluminum comes into play. And they're nanoparticles that are being dispersed into the air. And we breathe in this stuff. Yeah, it may be well dispersed over an area, but when you start to think about all of the reduction in honeybees, different populations, butterflies. I have done studies at my own home. I have lots of flowers that are appropriate for butterflies and honeybees and all of that. And it's rare to ever see a honeybee. And even the butterfly population has definitely reduced. But last year, I was so excited when the bill was signed into law that made it illegal in the state of Tennessee for the spraying operations, the geoengineering. And initially, I noticed a reduction in it. And I kept thinking at some point, this is going to get lower and lower and it will eventually subside. Well, instead, it began to increase in the fall. And at December, January timeframe, and even February, we've been inundated in Memphis with this geoengineering. And I began last year to try to figure out, who do I contact to find out, to make a complaint, say it's still happening in spite of the fact that we made it illegal, and at the same time, achieve a reduction, a further reduction, if not eliminate it. So I found out at that time that there was no enforcement.
Ms. Haggard, 3 minutes is up, but I want to go to Representative Fritz, and he may have a question for you. Representative Fritz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for driving up from Memphis.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned nanoparticles, and just to put a little bit of a definition on that before my question, what I researched is those are 1/77th the size of a human hair. That's hard for people to conceptualize. Most of us human beings can't conceptualize what we can't see. I might talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But are you referring to stratospheric aerosol injection when you refer to aluminum and the depositing of these nanoparticles into the atmosphere to reflect the sunlight? Is that your
Yes,
positive?
yes, I am.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for our guest? Seeing none, we'll go to our next guest. I think this is Mr. Trudell.
Trudell, yes.
Trudell.
Thank you.
You pull your microphone down. Pull your microphone down a little bit, and then.
Very
skip your-
proud to be here amongst y'all. The efforts y'all have been enduring has been profound, and I understand totally. We read, we see. I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. I've been to places during wartime, and I understand what chemicals can and do, and they're evil. It doesn't matter if it's war or not, but then there's the other geopolitical problems, and that's where it all started in Europe. This is not something that just got created all of a sudden by a business. The other issue has to do with, is there any entity, as y'all have demonstrated, it's quite an effort. You don't have the manpower, you don't have the money, you have a great state that is surrounded by so many other states likewise, and some are contributing in working together. But that's individual, 48 states have to figure all this stuff out individually. And then you have politics, which really doesn't even work in that. Federal government has to be the focus, the down pressure. And there are those, they are here. Health and Human Services, EPA. There's so many others that are very, very aware that now that they're in charge of the government, what they need to do. And when you talk about health, that's our biggest problem right there. It's a foundation thing. Robert Kennedy Jr. even brought it up. The quantity of people that are more ill, children especially, than there ever were. And it wasn't because of the sun, it was because of the chemistry. And it's because of the chemistry it is placed, sadly, in the issue of trying to, in theory, affect the climate, make everything better. No, it's to affect us and you and your families. And this is nationwide. So their job, in just my opinion, they've talked about it. EPA, same thing, the new chairman of that one. They're all becoming, with everything else after 6 or 7 weeks now, they are very aware of so much. But that is focused on us, human beings. And you can't figure out how to regulate all the other things. They have to come to a screaming halt, period. And I think with the power that we have in the federal government, with the new president, he doesn't sit and wonder. He does. He's fascinating. It is. And when he sends the actual effort, just like Representative Fritz has done, everyone is proud of you. You've done amazing things and we've kept up with it. We have our representative in Memphis we've all talked to them. But the real issue is this must be focused, and it must be focused at the federal.
Mr. Trudeau, we appreciate that. Representative Fritz, do you have a question or comment for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. Can you tell me a little bit about your aviation career and what you've seen as far as deposits in the skyline by different aircraft, sir?
Well,
Mr. Trudeau.
I've retired from FedEx 20 years. And before that, these things slowly began. Now, after I retired, then I started noticing endless horizon to horizon chemistry being deposited. The chemtrail is persona non grata. It is evil, period. It's not there to make your life better or mine better. But I do think that when it comes to all of these other people, they don't want this. And so many are ignorant too. They won't even talk about it. They like to stay in the dark, I guess, but not when you find out that you have another child that can't operate, can't run their lives because of their chemical problems that they have. So anyway.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last question. Can you tell us how many years you have been an aviator between your military service and your civilian service? And just what, again, a little bit of delta between what is a contrail and a chemtrail in your opinion?
Mr. Trudeau.
A little over 40 years between the military and FedEx. And it's flying the FedEx cargo all over the place, which y'all are familiar with. The real issue that I understand that there has to be a picture of why is this texture that you see in the air is this long. You don't have any real numbers. Most people don't have an idea from point A to point B. But why is there something that goes horizon to horizon over and over, multiple planes? Why are the X's in the sky? Why are there all these other representations airborne? Who are they? What are they? Like you've already tried to figure out within your own state. It is unanswerable. Who are they? When you say who are they, there's, like I said, there are people in the world that are very, very determined for us to have dysfunction in government. We have a new way of going about business now, and it will be not tolerated. I can guarantee you that just by listening to how our new leadership all over is.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for our guests? Okay, seeing none, we thank you both for participating, and without objection, we will go back into session. We're back in session on House Bill 1112. I have Chairman Grills on the list next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor. Be honest with you, a couple of years or so ago, I heard these things and thought, where's my tinfoil hat? And then last year, I've had articles sent to me, and then I read the articles, watch the clips. Last year, we had a young man come in and testify. Well, that added a little more credibility to your arguments and to some of the issues that we were seeing. And then you brought the document from the White House. That adds a little more credibility to it. I was on the campaign trail last summer knocking on doors, and people were actually bringing this up when you go to ask people for their vote. This is something that people really take serious. And with that, I'm curious as to how do you see TDEC and in their role with the limited resources that they have, how are they going to effectively be able to manage, implement, enforce the legislation that you're bringing before us?
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that. I would offer a couple things in response to that. First, again, an appreciation on the record. I can't say this enough. TDEC has taken a lion's share. Perhaps only I and a couple of y'all have gotten more emails and phone calls about this than TDEC has. And I'm sure I've gotten thousands of them. But I appreciate them taking this on. And from the enforcement, I would go back, Representative, that in current code, it is the responsibility of TDEC and other departments to study the weather modification and conduct those studies. That's been in law for, I think, 25 years in the state of Tennessee. And you would hope that's included in the budget and in the appropriations to make sure that we have the manpower to do that. As we move forward this legislation, the reason that I assigned in this bill the prosecutorial authority to the AG and the DAs is because they already have that mechanism in place to collect evidence and to be able to bring a prosecution action against someone who's not complying with the law. The law that we passed last year was very simply a prohibition against injecting those chemicals for the express purpose, just to modify the weather. And so very tightly written, I think. Again, the tinfoil hat representative, I probably had the same thing when a good friend sitting in my rear asked me to carry this bill last year. But as I researched it more, it becomes more evident to me that this is an absolute thing that's taken place. And I think it's incumbent upon us to take care of both old folks like me and our grandkids to make sure that we have legislation in place, assigning that prosecutorial authority to our DAs and AGs to be able to bring case against those folks who are violating the Clean Air Act in Tennessee.
Chairman Grills?
How do you expect TDEC to enforce who may be the perpetrator? The AG to enforce who the perpetrator. It may be something that's going on in Louisiana or Arkansas, and yet Tennessee our taxpayers will be the one having to bear the expense of the investigatory process, of the enforcement process, of the prosecutions. How's that going to work with TDEC?
Representative Fritz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, again for that question. I'll offer an analogy I've given to many folks, and I don't know that you and I have had this discussion. And it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's serious and it's underlying. If we had someone coming across Interstate 40 into Memphis, Tennessee from Arkansas, and they were bringing some biohazard waste from a hog farm, since they're the Razorback state, we can pick on Arkansas just a little bit. And that container that they were bringing across into Memphis and on up into Jackson and into Nashville, and then eventually when they got to God's country in Kingston and Watts Bar Lake, it was spilling this potential biohazard, smelly, nasty, maybe harmful to our children substance along the roadways. We would certainly reach out to our friends in Arkansas and say, we want you to stop doing this because you're putting Tennesseans' lives and livelihood at jeopardy in doing so. And I would offer to you that same thing applies wherever this deposit into the atmosphere, whether it's a ground-based or an air-based mechanism, and wherever it may be coming. I think I think it's part of the Attorney General's responsibility to stand up for the citizens of Tennessee when things like that are harmful to them. I think I think that's a necessary thing.
Chairman Grills?
Last follow-up here is, I know we discussed this in sub last week, but you have no intention whatsoever for this to affect the agriculture sector, the crop dusters that we depend on so much to make sure that our crops are clean and pest-free.
Representative Fritz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. And again, to reiterate, that's why we specifically put weather modification in the code for this year, that it limits this action to just the weather modification, the geoengineering. Absolutely no intent for the crop dusting and those other things.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Halsey?
Question on the bill.
We have a motion for previous question. Without objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 1112. Mr. Clerk, please open the vote. Please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 11 ayes, 3 nays.
Motion carries. House Bill 1112 moves on to calendar and rules. Any other business before the committee today? I would mention that next week, a week from today, is Ag Day here at the Capitol. So I'll encourage everyone at 7:30, breakfast starts out on the plaza. So when we have some special activities that day, hope everyone can come back and join us. We appreciate those that have joined us in the audience today. Thank you for your participation. And without objection, we'll stand adjourned.